Lauryn Licari's name spread like wildfire the night she vanished without a trace, but as investigators uncovered hidden cash, secret journals, and betrayal within her own family, it became clear her disappearance was not just a mystery, it was the beginning of a chilling story with twists no one saw coming. Lauryn Licari's life seemed ordinary to everyone who knew her, but the night she went missing became one of the most puzzling cases her town had ever seen. She had finished her shift at the cafe just as the sun dipped behind the horizon, leaving the streets dim and quiet. Witnesses recalled seeing her wave goodbye to a co-worker before walking to her car, yet that was the last confirmed sighting of her. Hours later, her vehicle was discovered parked near her apartment complex. What unsettled investigators was the state of the car. It was locked. The keys had been left inside on the passenger seat, and Lauren's phone was missing. There were no broken windows, no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared stolen. It was as if she had simply stepped out and disappeared into thin air. The news spread quickly through the town. Friends and neighbors gathered in small groups, whispering about what could have happened. Her family reported her missing the following morning after she failed to answer repeated calls and missed an important family lunch she had promised to attend. Police were cautious at first, considering the possibility that Lauryn had chosen to leave on her own. But that theory quickly weakened when her belongings at her apartment were found untouched, and she had left behind her bank cards, personal documents, and work schedule. Nothing suggested she had planned an escape. Search teams combed through wooded areas, lakesides, and abandoned properties within miles of her last known location. Flyers with her photo were posted on street poles, convenience stores, and gas stations. The local news carried her story every evening, and the community became deeply invested in the search. The eerie part was how little evidence surfaced. Dogs brought in for scent tracking lost the trail only a short distance from where the car was parked. Neighbors near the lot claimed they hadn't heard anything unusual that night. No cries for help, no sounds of a struggle, no suspicious vehicles speeding away. The silence surrounding her disappearance was unsettling. To many, Lauryn was the type of person who lived cautiously, rarely staying out late, and always keeping her family informed about her whereabouts. For her to vanish so suddenly, without even a trace, struck fear in the hearts of those closest to her. Police urged the public to remain vigilant, suggesting that someone must have seen or heard something. Yet as days passed with no developments, a darker suspicion began to form. Whatever had happened to Lauryn Licari was not random. It carried the chilling weight of something deliberate, planned, and hidden just beneath the surface. As the investigation pushed forward, detectives began to uncover fragments of Lauryn Licari's private life that painted a far more complicated picture than anyone had imagined. At first glance, Lauryn appeared to be a young woman with a steady routine: work, family gatherings, occasional outings with friends. Yet beneath that routine was a series of choices and secrets that suggested she was hiding something significant. When police traced her bank records, they noticed a pattern of unusual withdrawals. Over the span of 2 months, Lauryn had taken out several $1,000s in cash, small amounts at a time, enough to avoid raising suspicion, but noticeable when added together. None of the money was found in her apartment, and no one could say for certain what she had done with it. Her phone records offered another troubling clue. Investigators discovered repeated calls placed late at night to an unregistered number, one that could not easily be tied to a name or address. These conversations lasted long enough to suggest more than casual contact, yet no one close to Lauryn recognized the number. The secrecy left detectives to wonder whether she had been confiding in someone unknown to her family, or if she had been manipulated into a dangerous situation. Even more startling was the discovery on her personal laptop. Recent searches included topics such as how to disappear without leaving a trace, stories of people who had changed their identities, and missing persons cases. These findings led some investigators to consider the possibility that Lauryn might have staged her own disappearance. Still, those who knew her best rejected that idea. Lauryn had a close bond with her younger sister and often reminded friends of her dreams for the future. To imagine her walking away voluntarily seemed unthinkable. The case took another turn when officers searching her apartment discovered a locked box hidden beneath a loose floorboard. Inside were journals filled with detailed notes about people in town, some of whom were well known. Lauryn had written about late-night meetings she had observed, unexplained shipments arriving at warehouses, and unusual financial transactions involving a local businessman whose name carried both influence and suspicion. She appeared to have been documenting these activities carefully, as though she was preparing to expose something. What had begun as a missing person case now looked darker, more calculated. Lauryn had clearly been gathering evidence about matters bigger than herself. Whether she disappeared on her own or was silenced by someone who discovered her investigation, one truth became clear: Lauryn Licari's life was far more complex than anyone had realized, and the danger she faced may have stemmed from secrets she uncovered. Weeks dragged by without progress until a sudden tip breathed new life into the investigation. A truck driver contacted police claiming he had seen a woman who matched Lauryn Licari's description at a rest stop several hours from her hometown. According to his statement, she was not alone. The woman appeared anxious, constantly glancing over her shoulder, and was accompanied by a man in a dark hooded jacket. Security cameras confirmed his account. The footage showed a young woman with Lauryn's build and features, her posture tense, her movements hurried. While the image was grainy and unclear, investigators were convinced it could be her. The sighting shifted the investigation from a local search to a statewide effort. Detectives combed through records of purchases made in the area, and what they discovered was chilling. Lauryn's credit card had been used at a nearby gas station only minutes after the rest stop sighting. The transaction was small, just a tank of fuel and a bottle of water, but it was enough to prove she had not left on her own accord. Whoever the hooded man was, he had access to her belongings and possibly to Lauryn herself. The card trail led investigators to an isolated rural property on the outskirts of the county. The land was registered under a corporation linked to the very businessman Lauryn had been investigating in her hidden journals. The connection was too strong to dismiss. A raid was quickly organized, and the property revealed disturbing details. Several rooms inside a rundown farmhouse appeared to have been used for temporary stays. Blankets were scattered on the floor, half-empty water bottles sat on counters, and security equipment was hidden in corners. One room had papers strewn across a desk, some containing notes and maps of areas Lauryn had written about in her journals. Forensic teams collected fingerprints, soil samples, and traces of hair that were later confirmed to belong to Lauryn. Despite this critical evidence, she was not there. The house had been abandoned days, perhaps even hours, before authorities arrived. The eerie emptiness suggested whoever had been holding her had been tipped off. The discovery raised urgent questions. Had Lauryn been kept there against her will? Did she manage to escape before investigators arrived? Or had she been moved to another, even more hidden location? The evidence pointed to her being alive, at least until recently, but the lack of her presence left a void that deepened the sense of dread. The case had now evolved into something far more sinister than anyone had first believed. The investigation took an unexpected and deeply unsettling turn when forensic analysis from the rural property revealed a second DNA profile alongside Lauryn's. To the shock of her family and the community, it matched her own cousin, someone who had been visibly active in search efforts, attending vigils, and standing beside her parents during media interviews. At first, the discovery seemed impossible to believe. He had presented himself as one of the most determined supporters of the investigation, often urging others not to give up hope. Yet the evidence placed him inside the very property linked to Lauryn's disappearance. When questioned, he admitted he had known about Lauryn's private research. According to his statement, she had shared some of her findings with him, insisting that she was close to uncovering something dangerous. He claimed he had only gone to the property to check on her, believing she might be in trouble. His explanation raised more suspicion than it resolved. Detectives began to piece together his financial records and discovered troubling connections. Large sums of money had been deposited into his bank account from companies tied to the businessman Lauryn had been investigating. The payments coincided with the weeks leading up to her disappearance. The more investigators examined his background, the clearer the cracks became. He was burdened with debt, struggling to maintain his lifestyle, and those payments suggested he may have been pressured or persuaded to betray his cousin. While he maintained his innocence, refusing to admit any direct role in Lauryn's disappearance, the evidence against him was mounting. It was no longer just a case of a missing woman. It appeared to be part of a calculated plan, one that involved manipulation from within her own family. The revelation left the town reeling. Those who had once looked to him as a grieving relative now viewed him with suspicion and anger. For Lauryn's parents, the betrayal cut deep. They had trusted him to stand beside them in their darkest days, never suspecting he could be entangled in the very events that tore their daughter away. Investigators pressed forward, convinced they were closer to unraveling the truth. The question was no longer whether Lauren's cousin had knowledge of the crime, it was how much he had participated and whether he had helped orchestrate the disappearance from the inside. The lines between loyalty and betrayal had blurred, casting a long shadow over the case and suggesting Lauren's fate was far more sinister than anyone had imagined. Months passed without a clear resolution, until fate delivered an unexpected breakthrough. A hunter exploring dense woodland several miles from the rural property stumbled upon a decaying cabin hidden beneath overgrowth. The structure looked abandoned, its roof sagging, its walls scarred by age, but inside lay items that immediately drew investigators' attention. Among the dust and debris were Lauryn Licari's wallet, her distinctive silver bracelet, and most importantly, a small recording device. Forensic teams carefully collected everything, realizing this discovery could finally unravel the mystery that had haunted the town. When the contents of the device were reviewed, the truth of Lauren's final days began to emerge. Her voice filled the room, steady but tense, as she detailed her growing fear. She spoke of receiving anonymous threats warning her to abandon her investigation. She described how she suspected someone close to her was feeding information to the very people she had been documenting. Lauren's words carried the weight of someone who understood the danger she was in but refused to remain silent. The recordings ended abruptly, with no indication of what happened next, but their existence confirmed she had anticipated betrayal from within her circle. The evidence from the cabin tied directly back to the businessman and Lauren's cousin. Prosecutors argued that together they had conspired to silence her, driven by greed and desperation. The businessman faced charges for orchestrating the operation, while her cousin stood accused of luring her into danger. Yet without Lauren's body, the case remained riddled with uncertainty. Defense attorneys pushed back, suggesting she could still be alive, having vanished deliberately to escape the threats she herself had described. This argument left jurors and the public divided. The trial drew national attention, with headlines capturing every twist. The recordings were played in court, Lauren's voice echoing across the room like a haunting reminder of the courage she carried and the danger she faced. Though charges were filed, the absence of her body left many unanswered questions. Was she killed and hidden so carefully she has never been found? Or had she somehow managed to slip away, living under a new identity to protect herself from powerful enemies? Even as verdicts were reached, the mystery refused to close. Lauryn Licari's fate remained uncertain, her story incomplete. What became clear, however, was that she had uncovered truths far greater than anyone expected. And those truths came with a price. For her family and community, the haunting question endures: what really happened to Lauryn? And will the full story ever be revealed?